O Leon Oliveira Martins, aquele garoto doce, sapequinha, criador dos canais Cadê a Chave, Coisas de Nerd, famoso por sair por aí caçando alegremente seus pokémons ou construindo mundos fantásticos no Minecraft, estava revoltado no Twitter. Estava completamente transtornado, dizendo que todos aqueles que não concordam com ele, que dizem que o nazismo não é de extrema-direita, são perfeitos retardados, tão idiotizados quanto os terraplanistas. Revoltado, comprando a briga. Bom, vamos lá. Leon Oliveira Martins, eu vou te fazer uma pergunta. Que paralelo você consegue fazer entre Hitler e os ícones da direita? Por exemplo, Ronald Reagan, Winston Churchill, Margaret Thatcher. O Adolf Hitler, ele é igualzinho ao Bolsonaro? Ou o Adolf Hitler é igualzinho ao Donald Trump? Me responde com sinceridade. Agora, se você comparar o Adolf Hitler com esses caras aqui, Mao Tse-tung, Stalin, Kim Jong-il, Hugo Chávez, Fidel Castro, você vai ver que cai como uma luva. Nossa, mas é exatamente o que Hitler fez. É exatamente. Só que esses caras não são da direita. Eles são da esquerda. Então por que é que você compara Hitler e o classifica na extrema direita? Nos próximos 15 minutos, os maiores historiadores do mundo, especialistas em União Soviética e nazismo, vão explicar por que o Leon está absolutamente errado. E lá, né, no Twitter, completamente revoltado, ele começa a comparar a economia do período militar brasileiro com a economia de Hitler. Puxa vida! E para dar mais enfoque aos seus argumentos, cita um grande pensador brasileiro, ok? Youtubercides, a Melicides, o PC Siqueira. Recordar é viver. Há pouco tempo atrás, o PC Siqueira estava debochando, dizendo que Stalin matou foi pouco. O homem que fez um genocídio 3 vezes maior do que o de Hitler, estava lá PC Siqueira dizendo que ele matou foi pouco. E quando confrontado por um seguidor seu do Twitter, né, falou assim, para com isso, Leon vai jogar seus Minecraft, cara, vai caçar Pokémon, porra, tá falando muita besteira. Aí ele atacou para o seu monóculo, um apelo à autoridade. Quem sou eu para falar disso? Eu sou bacharel em Relações Internacionais com mestrado em Estudos Europeus na Alemanha. Nossa, a Alemanha é o pior lugar para se estudar nazismo, você sabe, né? Você que estuda jogos aí, a Alemanha baniu Wolfenstein, baniu comandos e tudo mais, mas eu olhei o seu currículo. Não existe lá nenhuma pesquisa ou trabalho relacionado à União Soviética e o nazismo. Esse é o primeiro apelo à autoridade que eu vejo sem ter autoridade nenhuma a respeito do assunto. É como se você viesse para mim falar a respeito de Pokémons, de caçar Pokémons, ou a respeito de Minecraft, de construir mundos fantásticos, e eu falar para você, estudei em Roterdã, eu estudei em Paris. O que tem a ver o cu com as calças? Eu não entendo nada de Pokémons. Eu não entendo nada de mundos fantásticos no Minecraft. E você mesmo, a respeito do seu mestrado, você diz o seguinte: sempre gostei de jogos desde pequenininho. Durante o mestrado eu estava muito entediado com o tema que estava trabalhando, que era a teoria da integração regional europeia. Um assunto muito chato. Então, no meio do processo, eu chutei o balde e decidi fazer sobre algo legal. Mudei o tema para a teoria de estudos culturais. E até então, eu que só jogava, a partir daí fui estudar videogame. Estudar Pokémons, estudar Minecraft, caçar Pokémons alegremente, por aí, por que não? É um estudo muito interessante, mas ele não tem a ver com o nazismo e União Soviética. Agora, você que diz que todos nós somos aqui perfeitos retardados, Pierre Chanou, professor emérito PhD da Sorbonne, membro do Instituto e comandante da Legião de Honra, ele diz o seguinte: o nazismo e o comunismo se tornaram, assim, lados opostos da mesma moeda revolucionária, gêmeos heterozigotos. Ele é um idiota também? Ele é um retardado? Ele é um terraplanista? O Richard J. Evans, PhD pela Oxford, Hamburgo, uma simples venda, diz o Richard J. Evans, exigia 40 papéis diferentes, tá, no nazismo, e ainda precisava se submeter à extorsão dos membros do partido. Também concorda com a opinião. O Richard Overy, PhD em História pela Cambridge, escreveu o livro The Dictators, tá? Fellow of the Royal Historical Society, Fellow of the British Academy, Fellow do King's College. Ele também concorda com essa opinião. Ele é um retardado também, ele é um terraplanista. Ele diz: um dos elementos ideológicos fundamentais é a ciência econômica para o socialismo e a biológica para o nazismo. Tatiana Bushuyeva, que escreveu Red Army and Wehrmacht, How the Soviets Militarized Germany. É um livro muito importante para você ler, Leon. O Ernst Toppisch escreve outro livro também chamado Stalin's War. O grande culpado, o plano de Stalin para iniciar a Segunda Guerra Mundial, do Viktor Suvorov. Você já leu esses livros, Leon? O que você sabe a respeito? Nos próximos minutos, bem rapidinho, você vai ver os maiores especialistas da história mundial dizendo: sim, o nazismo era de extrema esquerda. E ele te mostra os fatos. Mas você não pode ensinar aquele que não quer aprender, não é mesmo? Leon, você quer ou não quer aprender? Agora, nós concordamos. O comunismo foi a maior máquina de morte para todos os tempos. Você falou: agora eu vou abrir a boca, agora eu vou ser mais vocal, vou falar a respeito disso, vou me indignar. O comunismo continua matando. Vejam as vítimas na Venezuela. Que tal você usar a tua influência no teu canal e nós vamos juntos criar um abaixo-assinado para criminalizar o comunismo no teu país, no Brasil? Que tal nós fazermos isso? Aí você prova que você não é só um molequinho caçando pokémons e construindo mundos fantásticos por aí. Faz alguma coisa útil com a relevância que foi te dada.
You have to make the revolution, then establish the dictatorship of proletariat, and then the birth of the new man can be possible.
The birth of the new man was the ultimate aim of Marxism, breeding a new evolutionary form of human being who will think, look, and act differently. But communists were not alone in this endeavor.
Wir müssen einen neuen Menschen erziehen und zu einer neuen Lebensform zu führen.
Hitler's National Socialism was also about creating a new man.
In both systems you have an ideology which has the ambition of creating a new man. That means that both systems don't agree with human nature as it is. They are at war with nature, with human nature. This is the root of totalitarianism. You find it both in Nazi. In Nazi, it's an ideology based on false biology, and communism is based on false sociology. But both systems have an ambition of being scientific and resting on a scientific basis.
I don't think many people know that only socialists publicly advocated genocide in the 19th, 20th centuries. I think that's a very little known fact, and it seems shocking if you mention it. I've lectured on it here and in other universities, and it's always greeted with a sense of shock. It first appeared in January 1849 in Marx's journal Neue Rheinische Zeitung. Engels wrote of how the class war in Marxian terms means that when socialist revolution happens, the class war happens, there will be primitive societies in Europe 2 stages behind, because they're not even capitalist yet. And he had in mind the Basques and the Bretons and the Scottish Highlanders and the Serbs, and he calls them racial trash, Abfälle, racial trash, and they will have to be destroyed, because being 2 stages behind in the historical struggle, it will be impossible to bring them up to the point of being revolutionary.
He spoke about the vulgarity and dirtiness of Slavic people, you see. And he thinks, for instance, that Poland has no reason to exist.
The classes and the races, too weak to master the new conditions of life, must give way. They must perish in the revolutionary Holocaust. Karl Marx.
Marx began it. He was the ancestor of modern political genocide, and I don't know that any European thinker of the modern period before Marx and Engels ever publicly advocated racial extermination. I can't find anything earlier, so I presume it starts with them.
1 year after Lenin's death in 1924, the New York Times published a small article, which at the time went almost unnoticed. It was about some newly established party in Germany. The National Socialist Labour Party, of which Adolf Hitler is patron and father, persists in believing that Lenin and Hitler can be compared. Who's speaking? A certain Dr. Goebbels. On the speaker's assertion that Lenin was the greatest man, second only to Hitler, and that the difference between communism and the Hitler faith was very slight, a faction war opened with whizzing beer glasses. Amazing. The future Nazi propaganda minister Goebbels was openly declaring that the difference between Lenin's communism and the Hitler faith was very slight. As we read, it didn't go down well with potential voters, so the Nazis changed their tactics. Their early campaign posters quietly disappeared. They never again publicly stressed their resemblance to communists. In the inner circle, however, the Nazis and Hitler were more outspoken.
Hitler often said that he had learnt a great deal from Marxism, from reading Marx, I mean. The whole of National Socialism is based upon it, he said, meaning doctrinally based.
People keep forgetting that Nazi regime in Germany was also socialist. It was, they officially were called National Socialist Workers' Party. So it's a branch of socialism. The Soviets were international socialists, and those were in Germany national socialists. So it's the same thing in reality, only slightly different interpretation. Their idea was to destroy old order in Europe. And that was Stalin's big idea. Let Hitler be a bad guy. He will go and destroy all the order in Europe. There will be no parliaments, no trade unions, no armies, no governments, and then Stalin will come as a liberator. Liberator. Millions of people will be sitting in concentration camps, hoping for someone to liberate them, and Stalin and the Red Army will come as a liberator. That was his plan.
But Hitler had neither the resources nor the secure rear borders to wage a large-scale war. So, on August the 23rd, 1939, Hitler and Stalin sign a pact, which provides Germany with a secure eastern border and huge supplies of strategic resources to be provided in later economic agreements. On August the 24th, the Nazi Foreign Minister Ribbentrop reports to Hitler on his visit to Moscow. Hitler rejoices. Now he has everything he needs to start the World War. September 1st, 1939. Hitler attacks Poland from the west. Poland is desperately resisting the Nazis. But then, on September the 17th, Poland is unexpectedly attacked from the east by the Soviet Union.
Действия, которые совершило советское руководство, отдав приказ о вторжении на территорию Польши, согласно всем нормам международного права, не могут расцениваться никак иначе, как, так сказать, совершение агрессии.
The Luftwaffe's bombers were attacking Polish cities, and the Soviet radio transmitter in Minsk guided them to their targets. The Red Army looked different then. It entered the Second World War, side by side, with the SS. Local populations sometimes could not tell the difference between the two. So, to be sure, they addressed both.
The German army met the Red Army in the middle of Poland, and then the two totalitarian monsters, Soviet and German, divided the country between them.
The Soviet press depicted the whole thing as a fight against Polish fascism. The peace-loving Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union were fighting aggressive Polish fascism. What the world did not know was that both dictators had agreed on more than Poland. In a secret protocol signed in the Kremlin a week before the war started, Hitler and Stalin agreed on the division of Europe.
Сначала в этом проекте, который предлагал Риббентроп, этого не было. И вот как ни странно, инициатором составления вот этого тайного дополнительного договора был Сталин сам.
Finland a fascist regime and launched a massive ground attack. For its brutal aggression against Finland, the USSR was expelled from the League of Nations. The Kremlin's rhetoric about a fight against Finnish fascism was not taken seriously. Only 3 countries had previously been labeled as aggressors by the League: militaristic Japan, fascist Italy, and Nazi Germany. Now they were joined by the Soviet Union. In Europe, the Soviet Union had only one ally left: Hitler. Hitler launched his blitzkrieg in the West. Nazis occupied Denmark, Belgium, Holland, Luxembourg. Norway was invaded with the direct help of the Soviet Union. Stalin provided the Nazis with a Soviet naval base near Murmansk, from which Hitler launched his attack on Norway.
Когда было принято в Берлине решение о прекращении использования этой базы, то было направлено соответствующее благодарственное письмо адмирала Редера, наркому военно-морского флота Кузнецова, с выражением большой благодарности за услуги, оказанные германскому военно-морскому флоту.
Stalin wrote to the Nazi Foreign Minister Ribbentrop, "The friendship between Germany and the Soviet Union was sealed by blood." Apparently, he meant the blood of the Soviet and Nazi victims. And friendship it was. Soviet and Nazi officers were meeting and discussing the progress of the war. This is December 1939. The progress was good, and the prospects looked even better. there was reason to celebrate. The Soviet Union became the main supplier of resources for the Nazi war machine. Thousands of tons of oil, iron ore, construction materials. Even trainloads of Soviet grain were sent to the German army. Soviet citizens were starving, but their government was sending food to Hitler. The Soviet Union went even further. It persuaded the communist parties of Europe to sabotage the resistance movement and to support the Nazis.
Comforting to see Parisian workers talking to German soldiers as friends in the street or at the corner cafe. Well done, comrades, and keep it up. Even if it displeases the middle classes, the brotherhood of man will not remain forever a hope. It will become a living reality. That is the French Communist Party in July 1940.
Communist Party say today that they were resistant well before the June 1941 when Soviet Union was attacked. In fact, they were in fight with the Maréchal Pétain's government more than the German.
In June 1940, Hitler crushed France. Stalin, meanwhile, occupied Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia. The only country in Europe still resisting Hitler was Great Britain.
If Great Britain goes down, the Axis powers will control the continents of Europe and Asia and Africa and Australasia and the high seas. And they will be in a position to bring enormous military and naval resources against this hemisphere.
The US President Roosevelt regarded the Soviet Union as an Axis power. It was evident to everyone Stalin was in the fascist camp. The Soviet Premier Molotov went to Berlin to discuss the post-war world order. He arrived with a list of territories the USSR was interested in. While Hitler and Molotov were discussing it, the other Soviet comrades enjoyed the company of Goebbels, who must have talked about the advantages of Nazism, because it was the Soviet Premier Molotov and not Goebbels who warned the West not to fight Nazi ideology. More than that, in his address to the Supreme Soviet in the Kremlin, Molotov declared that fighting Nazi ideology was actually a crime. It was published in all the largest Soviet newspapers. Later, that page will disappear from the public libraries of the USSR, along with many other pro-Nazi statements of the Soviet government. But why was fighting Nazism a crime in the Soviet view? Because mass killings and concentration camps were based on that ideology. Work makes you free. The Nazi camps. Work is an honor. The Soviet camps. If someone wanted to fight the ideology behind it, he would end up fighting the Soviet regime too. Molotov knew it. After all, he was the one who personally monitored the extermination of 7 million Ukrainians. Himmler monitored extermination of Jews. Both men agreed that for the common good, certain groups simply needed to be killed.
The Nazi SS and the Soviet NKVD, the Stalin security police, cooperated very closely.
Archive documents reveal the enormous scale of this cooperation. Lists and lists of German communists and Jews, which Soviets were delivering to the Nazis. December 1937, April 1938, May 1938, November 1938. Most of these people perished in Nazi concentration camps. But the SS-NKVD partnership was not limited to the extradition of common enemies.
NKVD was training Gestapo.